Joining us now, one of our faves. She's the host of the Liz Wheeler Show. She's Liz Wheeler, which, by the way, just announced that all their episodes are going to be available in full on Twitter. Congratulations for that move. Love it.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, if Twitter's going to be the free speech platform and we have to censor ourselves, say, on YouTube, then why wouldn't we put all of our episodes on Twitter? We're really excited to be there.
100%. Listen, there's so much I want to get into with you, but of course, all of our guests tonight are commenting on the pending indictment of Donald Trump, or I guess it's an official indictment, but he'll be arraigned tomorrow. All of this pushback, apparently we're not allowed to point out that this very same Justice Department refused to press charges against Hillary Clinton. Have you been able to figure out what the distinction here is? Because I haven't.
Yes, the distinction comes in the form of a letter that follows the individual's name. If the letter following the individual's name is a D, then they are immune from prosecution. If the letter following the individual's name is an R, then they are a target of the federal government.
See, finally we have the answer.
It's completely bananas.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, exactly. It's really, truly as simple as that. This is how I was explaining it on my show this morning. Listen, what Jack Smith, the special counsel, wants to do right now is he wants to trick us into, remember the invisible gorilla video? The one where you're supposed to watch the kids throwing a red ball back and forth. You're supposed to keep your eye on that red ball. And meanwhile, unbeknownst to you, a gorilla walks behind the children. And like half of people watching this video don't see the gorilla because they're focused on the red ball. It's called selective attention in psychology. Yeah. And this is exactly what's happening to us now. Jack Smith wants us just to focus on his presentation, his indictment. It's like his entertainment, his show. It was a produced package to make you think what he wants you to think about Trump. Yeah. He doesn't want us to look at the context of the Presidential Records Act, for example. He just wants you to see these kind of salacious snippets of Trump talking to his staff and think, oh my goodness, was Trump violating the law? But if we look at the full context, the Presidential Records Act, the precedent set actually under Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, as you remember, had a sock drawer full of audio tapes. He'd recorded conversations with world leaders, highly classified information. And in 2012, a federal judge ruled that under the Presidential Records Act, a president is actually the one who decides what is personal effects and what is government property at the end of his term. So they allowed Bill Clinton, even though this information was classified, to keep it. I don't know how legally you could apply that to Bill Clinton and not apply it to Trump now.
By the way, Liz, conjuring what might be at the bottom of Bill Clinton's sock drawer is just giving me nightmares. I need to move on from that topic. Moving on to other nightmares, you know, this was Pride Week in Washington, D.C. I'm sure you saw the videos of the overt sexual acts being performed just a block away from children who were at the family-friendly part of the Pride event. And then, of course, at the White House on the South Lawn, in the South Portico, you saw that transgender Pride flag center, prominent, flanked by the American flag, but actually taking precedence over our stars and stripes. What does this tell you about the Biden administration and where their priorities lie?
It's not surprising. It's shocking. The Biden administration has embraced a neo-Marxist ideology. When you see that pride flag, it's not just about equality under the law. It's not just about tolerance for alternative lifestyle, so both of which, by the way, people in both parties, Republicans, Democrats, agree on. The pride flag is the transgender flag now. It's the progress transgender pride flag, which is just queer theory. This ideology, we can actually name it. Just like we named the terrible poisonous stuff our children were being taught about race in school, just like we were able to identify that as critical race theory. Yeah. What's being taught to our children about the gender spectrum and being gender fluid? This is queer theory. The Obama, or not the Obama administration, the Biden administration has embraced that. They've embraced the neo-Marxist ideology. It's so destructive. The only positive aspect to it, the only silver lining, is that we can see it. They're being open about it if we just believe them that they've embraced it.
But you know, there was a time when we Americans could say, fine, live and let live. You live your life, just leave me alone and leave our children alone. But not anymore. In the state of California, they've defined child abuse as taking actions that are not in the best interests of your children. And now they're adding to the list, not being in the best interest of your children, to not affirm your child's gender wishes. Here's one of the authors of the new modification to this bill speaking. Watch.
So this particular bill adds the very important factor that affirming a child's gender identity is in their best interest, which is what your question is about. Why does it actually say that in an affirmative way? And it really is because if you have a 7-year-old who's talking about having a potential to say, being able to articulate that they believe that they are not the same gender as they are biologically, then it should be affirmed. And through care, it should be determined. And that's what we did with our own child. And that would give the ability for a parent who wasn't sure to affirm and get their child the care that they need to make that, so they can begin to articulate that determination. But by saying and rejecting it in wholesale, then you're essentially rejecting your child. And that is not in the best interest of a child. We should be affirming our children in every possible way and getting them whatever appropriate care they need.
Liz Wheeler, I've watched the Liz Wheeler show enough to know that you like to hone in on the language being used here, and you can see the language here. Oh, we're just being positive. We're just saying you should affirm your children. That's in their best interest. But that last but is the key here. If you're not affirming your child, that means you're denying your child. It's not in their best interest, and then that's where the state steps in. This is terrifying.
It's evil. It's the epitome of evil. So this is California Assemblywoman Lori Wilson, who is probably one of the most dangerous characters in the state of California, second only to California State Senator Scott Wiener. Between the two of them, they introduced bills that are trying to codify into law requirements that parents trans their kids. I mean, think about a real world, using her example, a 7-year-old child. Think about how this would play out. So your 7-year-old, this is a child in 2nd grade. Maybe they've lost their front teeth. Comes to you, your son, and says, "Mom, Dad, I think I'm a girl trapped in a boy's body, and I want you to help me. I want to be affirmed in this," to use her words. What does that mean practically? Well, what that means is that you would take that child in the so-called gender affirming model. You take that child to a psychologist who would say, "Yes, you know, your delusion is real. You can actually tell us what you are, biology and reality notwithstanding." They would then be prescribed, that little boy would be prescribed puberty-blocking pharmaceuticals, which would chemically castrate him, Larry.
Yep.
Several years down the road, they would be given cross-sex hormones, which is incredibly destructive. That little boy would be rendered infertile, never able to reproduce, never able to probably have actual sex with a woman, and then later on would be physically castrated, have his genitalia cut off, and then fake breasts implanted into his body. When she says the best interest of our child, that's actually the phrase that got me more than anything else.
Yeah.
The best interest of the child, by what metrics are we measuring this? Are we talking about the physical well-being? Are we talking about the sexuality? Are we talking about the fertility? Are we talking about the psychological aspects? How are we measuring this?
Yeah.
She, of course, doesn't want to answer any of those questions, but the sad reality, the terrifying reality, is that if you don't trans your child, if your 7-year-old tells you that they're trans, she wants the state to take your child away from you.
Yeah, and listen, I think that everyone needs to be paying attention to this, because Gavin Newsom, probably the 3rd most dangerous politician in California, Liz, he has pretensions for the White House. He plans to live at 1600 Pennsylvania. If you're concerned, because I think a lot of Americans are like, oh, that's California, that's California. First of all, those are human beings and they're Americans who have to live in California. We should care about them. But also, it's coming for your state. It's coming for your school system if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think that this is a mistake Republicans have made for a long time, is dismissing California as the land of fruits and nuts. If you actually look at California politicians, California is the petri dish. It's the testing ground for these very radical leftist policies. And it's not just, they don't just remain contained to California. They are disseminated throughout our whole country. I mean, think about Nancy Pelosi, for example. Where did she start? She started in California state government. She then was the head of the California Democratic Party. She then became, obviously, one of the most destructive speakers of the House. Think about Kamala Harris. She was the attorney general in California. Now she's the vice president of the United States.
Yep.
One of the most destructive vice presidents of the United States that we've ever known. I mean, think about Javier Becerra. He started out as in California as well, and
Yep.
now he's at the federal level. These state politicians, the more destructive they are, the better the Democratic Party federally, nationally likes them and tries to elevate them to positions of power. What starts in California soon infects the rest of the country. So, I mean, you're right. We can't ignore this, because the children in California are children and deserve to be defended regardless of where they live, but also because this is coming for our children everywhere.
Add to that list, by the way, Alejandro Mayorkas, who, yes, was born in Cuba, but his political fortunes were all made in California as well. This Biden administration is replete with Californians, and we're seeing exactly how destructive their ideas are. Liz Wheeler, always great. You are one of our faves. Thanks for joining us today. That's the Liz Wheeler
Thanks, Larry.
Show.
I appreciate it.
You can get that anywhere you get your podcasts, and now fully with video on Twitter. Yay, Twitter. More to come on O'Connor Tonight. This is Salem News Channel.